Yeats moves further into modernism after the Easter Rebellion of 1916 in Dublin, where insurrectionists took over a portion of the square, primarily centered around the Dublin post office, and the nationalist movement, as it were, entered a new phase of fighting the British. And consequently, the nationalist leaders were rounded up and executed after just a couple of days, and the Sinn Féin movement really started to take off from this, and it inaugurated what was essentially the very bloody 20th century struggle for Irish independence from Britain, or at least the attempt to find a peaceful coexistence, which for a long time was not peaceful at all. But Yeats's reaction was complicated. He was a nationalist culturally, but politically, he didn't particularly like politics. He didn't particularly like being involved in that grubby materialist concern. He liked the legends of the Irish past. He liked the culture, the mythology of Ireland, and he preferred that as his version of nationalism. But when it got down to more pressing, immediate, modern, everyday concerns, he was always a little bit lukewarm on that. And his reaction to it poetically shows this. It plays upon that negotiation of nationalist fervor in politics and in poetry, in the ability to mythologize generally or mythologize politically. And he's straddling those two, trying to find a space for himself as an artist in this new era, in this new modernist era. This is just a couple of years after his first encounter with Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound is now whispering in his ear quite frequently about the way poetry should be, and scraping away some of the flourishes, some of the lyricism that Yeats indulged in throughout his earlier phase. And he is struggling now for a particular place for himself in the 20th century. He was a product of the Victorian age who is now not sure if there's a place for him in the 20th century, in a modern age, in a less decorative medium. And it's interesting to watch him struggle in that and find his own sort of compromise. Easter 1916. I have met them at close of day, coming with vivid faces from counter or desk among gray 18th century houses. I have passed with a nod of the head or polite meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite meaningless words, and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a jibe to please a companion around the fire at the club, being certain that they and I but lived where motley is worn. All changed, changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. That woman's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument until her voice grew shrill. What voice more sweet than hers when young and beautiful she rode to harriers? This man had kept a school and rode our winged horse. This other, his helper and friend, was coming into his force. He might have won fame in the end, so sensitive his nature seemed, so daring and sweet his thought. This other man I had dreamed, a drunken, vainglorious lout. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart, yet I number him in the song. He, too, has resigned his part in the casual comedy. He, too, has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Hearts with one purpose alone through summer and winter seem enchanted to a stone to trouble the living stream. The horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range from cloud to tumbling cloud. Minute by minute they change. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horse hoof slides on the brim, and a horse plashes within it. The long-legged moor-hens dive, and hens to moorcocks call. Minute by minute they live, the stones in the midst of it all. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Oh, when may it suffice? That is heaven's part. Our part to murmur name upon name as a mother names her child, when sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild. What is it but nightfall? No, no, not night, but death. Was it needless death after all? For England may keep faith for all that is done and said. We know their dream, enough to know they dreamed and are dead. And what if excess of love bewildered them till they died? I write it out in verse. MacDonough and McBride and Connolly and Peirce, now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, are changed, changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Wow, a lot of lyricism in there, a lot of repetition. There is that very familiar Yeatsian flow to it, lyricism, and those crystal clear lines, terrible beauty is born, that just toll a musicality and a significance that nobody else can touch in comparison to Yeats. He is a master of the individual line and that clarity. But the poem itself is an interesting meditation on the value of political commitment, and in a way, it is a declaration of independence from political commitment, a denigration of the intensity of politics. And it bears the marks of an art and an aesthetic very much in transition to a more modern, abstract age. The beginning is pure, is a pure distillation of the Eliatic and Poundian reference to like the unreal city, while at the same time you're getting that sense of Wordsworth and London, looking out at London Westminster Bridge. I have met them at close of day, coming with vivid faces from counter or desk among gray 18th century houses. I have passed with a nod of the head or polite meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite meaningless words. Polite meaningless words makes you think automatically, quite frankly, of J. Alfred Prufrock. Polite meaningless words. What is modern conversation other than polite, meaningless words that have no actual significance behind them? It's just chatter that accumulates and we participate in, but it has nothing of value in it. And that grayness of the city, that grayness of the modern age, of the modern industrial, financial, capitalist age, where all of those vivid faces, the individual might be vivid, and that could be livid almost also. It could be vivid with anger, vivid with passion of some form, let's say. But they are caught in this very gray world, from counter and desk, these senses of the bourgeois middle class lifestyle that Yeats just hated. And that sense of him just moving through almost like an alien, taking note of all of these faces, the unreal city, and that sense of they're all sort of stuck in this gray reality. But perhaps that vivid hints at Yeats's or the narrator's special ability, the poet's special ability to see within the grayness those little marks of humanity, those little marks of individuality, those little marks of passion. There is that possibility in there. The aloofness, however, of that singular figure of the narrator, of perhaps Yeats, is also remarkable. How he is somehow separate from all of these people, perhaps above all these people. And he imagines having these polite, meaningless words with them. Yes, yes, nodding, nodding. And even afterwards, recalling them to people at the club. A bit of an elevated, bit of a class consciousness thing there, perhaps. Maybe this is Yeats self-indicting himself for his comfortable bourgeois lifestyle or upper class lifestyle, living in Lady Gregory's tower and all of that, and not having to worry about money. Maybe there's that self-consciousness there, but it is certainly a distance. It is certainly an alienation from the crowd that he is referencing there. He's talking about making fun of, perhaps because of their vivid faces, making fun of all these people when he's sitting around the fire with his clubby friends, and being certain that they and I but lived where motley is worn. That motley is an interesting idea, because motley is at once it is the costume of a court clown, going back to the medieval age, think harlequins perhaps, and that goofy, ludicrous costume that shows that you were within the court system but still at a remove from it. The motley fool. In Shakespeare, the fool was always the smart one, perhaps the most keenest advisor to the couriers around them, the courtiers, to the king. But here there is an ambiguity. Now, Ireland is certainly outside the court system of Great Britain, you could say, outside the court system of England. So maybe it is the fool to that. Maybe it is just the silly entertainment. Perhaps. But it is also a sign, perhaps, of some critics have noted, Irish nationalism broadly. And this uncertainty, this ambiguity is baked into this poem, where we're not sure exactly what the narrator's view of is he proud to be motley, to be wearing motley? It is a sense of proud nationalist identification against Britain, but he seems uncertain about his relationship to it. And he is now looking at this in the past tense, saying, I have seen all of this, I have felt all this, I have thought all this. And now he's reflecting, it is now changed utterly. All changed utterly. That all is very Yeatsian, and that repetition is very Yeatsian. A terrible beauty is born. What a great line. And here the born is an interesting play on the title of the poem, the occasion of the poem, which is Easter. The rebellion happened over Easter and over Easter weekend, and that he is playing with this idea of being born, of resurrection, if you will, which is a kind of resurrection of a nationalist spirit, or the spirit of Ireland resurrected from its ancient forebears, and to throw off the shackles of British imperialism, perhaps. But it is a play on this sense of, is it a myth or is it a reality? Are those people out there just ordinary political prisoners who were crucified like Jesus? Or are they Christ? Are they, in fact, risen spirits guiding us as inspiration through the rest of our lives? That woman's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument until her voice grew shrill. Now, there are historical figures with whom all of these you can find their real identities in the footnotes and stuff like that. There is, I would say, a certain misogyny possibly here. That woman, very hostile, and that word shrill. Not necessarily that could be seen as a bit coded, as a bit loaded, as a bit sexist and misogynist, quite frankly. This woman was a revolutionary figure, very comparable, I would say, to Yeats's Maud Gonne, with whom he has obvious complicated relationships, complicated feelings, and he is perhaps taking a little bit out on this woman. But the idea that instead of being a sweet lady, as he would expect her to be, and as he always wanted Maud Gonne to be, she is somewhat lost to passionate nationalist fervor and the intensity of the materialist concerns of the modern age, which just frustrates Yeats to no end. And he remembers when she is young and beautiful and her voice was so sweet and all of that before all of this grubby business took hold of her. And he has the same complaint about the men as well. He talks about the one man who could have been a poet. He rode our winged horse. Our poet's winged horse is Pegasus, the symbol of poetry and poetic inspiration. And so he had great potential for art, for something more refined, for something more beautiful, but he chose to go the grubby route of politics. And the same with his friend. He had great potential to produce beauty in the world and do all the things that Yeats approved of, but he also was sidetracked and seduced into politics. And he sees this as a great shame. And then, of course, he comes also to McBride, who is the man who married Maud Gonne after Yeats had proposed to her. And he feels a little rivalry to him. And McBride was apparently not a particularly good husband. They had a troubled relationship until he was executed for insurrection. And Yeats concedes that, okay, no, now he is different now too. He is transformed utterly along with the others. They are no longer just these grubby, heated, annoying people who are always going on about the political concerns and the plight of the working man and freedom and all of this stuff that, oh, who cares? Now they are transformed utterly, and a terrible beauty is born from them. And then he starts meditating on that process of creating beauty out of something horrible or something ugly, which is in a way a paradigm of resurrection. Hearts with one purpose alone through summer and winter seem enchanted to a stone to trouble the living stream, the horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range from cloud to cloud. Notice all the nature imagery here. All of this nature is going on around the stone. The stone is in the middle of the stream that keeps moving. All of these animals are moving around the stone. The stone is just sitting there. Now, it is solid. It is permanent. It has great strength of its own, you could say, but it is not life. Everything around it is always changing. Everything around it is showing life. And that gives an alienation to the coarseness of the stone, the coarseness of hearts of stone, the coarseness of hearts impervious to beauty and art. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. These people, these revolutionaries, these insurrectionists were too caught up in the mundane, coarse world that they were that they trafficked in, and so they become stones. They become rigid. They lose their life. Oh, when may it suffice? When is it enough? When were they? How much did they have to sacrifice of their humanity to have value? That is heaven's part, our part, to murmur name upon name. And he's just, okay, that is not for us to say. We can't say how much is enough. We can't say how much commitment to politics that they should have before they, or that they can have, while still maintaining their humanity. That's the big picture stuff. That's above my pay grade. That's for God and heaven to concern themselves with. Our only part is to murmur name upon name. And here you get a sense of him sort of saying, well, okay, poets of a certain kind are part of this too. We are murmuring name upon name. We are valorizing these figures. We are celebrating these figures in a kind of death murmur of our own. We murmur name upon name. Like we're saying a prayer with no significance. These names become then more meaningless words. And you see Yeats struggling with that a little. You see Yeats judging other poets for that, for trafficking in that sort of thing. The participation in poetry in that way, to have such a, to take a coarse element of life as he sees it and to make of it something, or try to make of it something idealized, is not worthy of poets, not worthy of art, because it's not true art to Yeats. Now, Yeats' entire career is about taking the ordinary and finding some mythological or magical or occult or spiritual element within it, or at least an element aspirational through it. And it is a little self-reflection here. It is a little self-condemnation. Certainly condemning other poets who do this, who just write little ditties that celebrate the great figures, the great men of the political and worldly scene, in elegies and eulogies and all of that. But Yeats is going somewhere in this poem that I'm not sure he's even sure where he is going with it. I'm not sure he has worked all of this out. To murmur name upon name as a mother names her child when sleep at last has come on limbs that have run wild, which is a little condescending. He is, on children. He is putting himself in the position of the mother. The art, the sense of beauty, is a kind of mothering figure here, a soothing, nurturing figure that, puts their children to bed. Like, okay. It is condescending, but he catches himself again immediately thereafter. He says, no, not night, but death. What is it but nightfall? No, not night, but death. He rejects the metaphor. He rejects the valoration. He rejects the idealization. No, it's not night. It's death. This isn't a mother soothingly putting their child to sleep. This is death. This is course. This is reality. That's the world they chose in. That's the world they live in. That's the world they die in. There is no resurrection. There is no rebirth. Their death is death. And he does even give a little credence to England here. Was it a needless death after all? For England may keep faith for all that is done and said. England may keep faith. England had made some promises about home rule, and there was some negotiations, and he's giving England the benefit of the doubt here and saying, well, why did you have to go and start this insurrection? England might come through and might give us what we want through normal processes, and we just have to be patient and don't get so worked up about it. He has that troubled relationship, I would say, with England, very much in his youth, spending an awful lot of time in London, and very much a fan of Blake and other English poets. So he's always a little suspicious on that. He's not the fervent Irish nationalist you might think on first blush, or at least that he tries to present himself at certain times, even within this poem. We know their dream enough to know they dreamed and are dead. And I love the enjambment here. That's a little bit overworked. We know their dream. It's a great line, but then to maintain the rhyme and also make this line, I would say, this little rhyme, a little bit skewed, a little bit odd. He sticks that comma in there and adds enough at the end. So it's drawing attention to itself. We know their dream. This is coming right after England. And well, okay, is it the English's dream? Is it their dream, or is it, their dream? No, okay. If it's the English's dream, that's going to mean something else. Perhaps their dream of reincorporating Ireland and all of those fussy little revolutionaries go away. Maybe. But their dream, they here at this point, we have celebrated these four figures, these four revolutionaries who were executed. Their dream, that's the more likely referent here. We know their dream. And again, that sort of offhand condescension to it. We know their dream. And they are once again isolated from we. We, for Yeats, is perhaps he is trying to position himself as the voice of the common man, the voice of Ireland broadly, not these few radicals who just got all worked up over something. Maybe, but the condescension of we know their dream, as if it's, okay, you're never going to get that. It's a little rich to have Yeats lecturing people on reality and sticking to realistic goals and visions and understandings and stuff. The guy was kind of nuts, but we know their dream enough to know they dreamed and are dead. Okay, they dreamed, it's nice, but they're dead now. That sort of final line right there, that final rhyme in on that line is abrupt. It is a little bit harsh, let's say. Okay, all of that came to nothing. And again, that's the perspective perhaps that he is previously ascribing to, well, that's for heaven to decide, but now Yeats is jumping in and saying, no, that's nothing. Now, maybe the oddity of that line, maybe the curiosity of the enjambment and the peculiarity and the strength of that line causes us, or is prompting us to look at it and say, well, okay, is this now the narrator just getting a little crusty, just getting a little bit reactionary in his own right? Is he now too materialist to get on board with the idealization of these figures? And so he is positioning himself in an odd way, perhaps to ironize himself so that we as readers can see that and maybe pull back from it a bit. But it is uncertain, and he's playing with that and calling on readers, I would say, in a very modernist way, calling on readers to start to make some judgments on their own. Where do you fall in this? What is your allegiance? Because he is sort of jumping around here. He questions whether or not these people are even worth it. And what if excess of love bewildered them till they died? Maybe their passions got them swept away. Maybe their passions got the better of them. Bewildered is a really great word because it simultaneously means confused in a conventional sense, but also to bewild something, to make it wild, to make it, well, in one sense, more natural, like the nature that we saw in the earlier lines, but also to lose their senses, to lose their composure, to lose their ability to think and appreciate beauty, to become beasts. If they are swept up in the passions of the moment of the political system, they become beasts. And then he writes this trite little rhyme in answer to these core questions. I write it out in a verse, McDonough and McBride and Connolly and Peirce. So sing-songy, so trite and silly, and you can see generations of children reciting lines like that in valoration of the heroic figures of the past while standing up in front of their classroom and proving that they did their homework. I write it out in a verse, McDonough and McBride and Connolly and Peirce, now and in time to be, oh, so archaic, that time to be, so poetic, so self-consciously, almost laughably lyrical, time to be. Wherever green is worn. So now the motley of identifying with Ireland earlier has become green. The green of Ireland. The green of nationalism. The green of St. Patrick's Day and the Irish generally, as opposed to, let's say, the orange of the North, perhaps? I don't know. Wherever green is worn, are changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. The tolling of that gives a kind of cyclical structure to the poem, which obviously Yeats loves. He loves cycles and gyres and all of that stuff. He likes the coming around. And in this sense, this political sense, this overtly political poem is suggesting perhaps that, well, yeah, people always get worked up over politics, but then the cycle turns and things come and they go and it's all a fashion and it is more condescension almost. He is saying, all right, we will celebrate these figures. We will celebrate McDonough and McBride and Connolly and Peirce. And we will do all this stuff and we will raise them to the level of ideals, even though they were all kind of jerks. We will celebrate them for all eternity because that's what we do until we get new people to celebrate for all eternity. And then we kind of forget about them and we go on and it's always something new and these things will all come and go. But art lasts forever. Art is really part of the ideal. Pushing these people up into the level of the ideal does not make them art. They are still all kind of coarse and grubby. Pushing them up makes fools of all of us, perhaps, unless we are conscious of it individually. So when he writes, and I write it out in a verse, he says, okay, I'll participate in that because maybe that's my part to do as opposed to heaven's part. But I've got a consciousness of it. And he doesn't write it particularly well. He writes it in that very sing-songy, standing in front of a classroom proclaiming style that is kind of ludicrous, that is just trivial. And he knows, obviously, how to work between those modes. Between, okay, here I'm going to write something that's self-consciously bad, but I'm going to show you that it's bad by having that be bad, and then the other parts are going to be so damn good. He knows how to do that, so that a terrible beauty is born just wraps all of this up in this expectation that it's all just a game. that poetry is in fact absorbing all of it. It absorbs the history and the materialism and the politics and all the dullness and wraps it up with all the nature and the streams and the animals and the flowers and all of that. And poetry operates beyond all of the grubby, mundane concerns that we might have. The suggestion of an idealism beyond the recognizable, beyond the material, beyond the visible, is obviously part and parcel of Yeats's infatuation with the occult, but it also plays into modernist themes where art is something abstract, where it is something beyond us. And we can look in the modern world for some evidence of it, very much like Wordsworth. We can look around for little glints of divinity. But that act of looking is still mundane. It is still caught up with our human limitations. And so we are all participating in a kind of divorced reality from the ideal. We understand that it's out there. We understand that there is a realism or that there is an idealism somewhere out there, or at least artists can. Artists like Yeats understand. And so he's always searching, always circling around something again and again and again, trying to figure out how to tap into that, how to access that. And so the repetition is just a circling around of reality. The repetition is a trance-like mantra trying to induce a spiritual receptiveness. A terrible reality is born. A terrible reality is born. It is the story of the resurrection of Christ, but it is also at the same time a recognition that perhaps Christ isn't coming back, I would say, because our concerns are too petty. Our concerns are too grubby. And a terrible beauty is the same apocalyptic sentiment that you see voiced repeatedly in Yeats's poems. Almost wishing for the end.